What's going on, everybody? It is January. We are in the thick of the conference play in basketball, college basketball season, and that can only mean one thing. It is time to do some more forecasting. Yes, Tracking the Madness for the 2019 edition. It is back. First projection of the year. I was working so hard on this last night, keeping up with all the games that were going on and everything, watching my North Carolina Tar Heels win again, beating Notre Dame. Purdue also won yesterday, easily beating Rutgers. So my teams are doing very, very well, as I mentioned in the ATSD video yesterday when I did the college basketball breakdown. So I was very, very doing a lot of research last night, putting this together. But I think now I've kind of got a general sense of, where teams are at, everybody's at. It's certainly, and I got to say, the first one is always the hardest because it's not easy to place, teams in the seed lines and where you're going to shift them. And sometimes you might have different, conference champions than, some of the other projectors out there. So I had to do some shuffling around because like I said, I've always said, the way that I do it is based on who's leading the conference at the time. I don't do like future. Like, for example, I'll give you one prime example with Conference USA. Right now, UTSA is leading, but a lot of the other projectors out there have like North Texas in, for example. Well, North Texas is leading the conference. So So this is if the season ended today, right now. So I really take that into account. Or another example, Mountain West. UNLV right now, not Nevada, is leading the Mountain West. So right now I have UNLV in the field because they're leading the conference. I still have Nevada in, but just not as the conference's automatic spot. Or with the American, with UCF leading the American. But people were saying, Houston's going to win the conference. Well, they might, in the end, they might get the automatic bid, but right now UCF's leading. So I have to factor that in when it comes to placing all these seeds around. Same with St. Louis. St. Louis is leading the Atlantic 10. But, again, a lot of people put like VCU in the field as the conference champ instead of St. Louis. And it's like, well, wait, St. Louis is leading the conference. I got to squeeze them in here somehow. So I was mashing teams in the field and rearranging all night for the majority of it last night after I did all the research. And finally, I got this out. Now, I will say this. Also, it was also right now really difficult to separate a lot of the last teams in the field to the first teams, next teams out, because a lot of the resumes are, somewhat similar. But this year, we also have a new ranking system to go by. The NCAA is no longer using the RPI as the main tool to evaluate these teams. They're now using what's called the net, or the NCAA evaluation tool. So how does the net work? How does it rate these teams? Well, it says right here in an article in the Washington Post, it relies on game results, strength of schedule, which is very critical, game location, always critical because home, road, neutral, that does matter, scoring margin, so margin of victory, net offensive and defensive efficiency. I think that definitely should play a role, kind of like the KenPom ratings did for a long time, and the quality of wins and losses. Yes, it's who you've beaten. That definitely plays a major role. The dates of games and the order in which they are played are not included in effort to give equal importance to early and late season games. See, I like that. It's level all across the board. It doesn't matter when you play them. That in-conference tournament you played in November matters just as much as a conference game in January, February. It's a level playing field in terms of the dates. Also, margin of victory is capped at 10 points. So that prevents teams from getting a boost by running up the score against inferior opponents. So that's huge too. So I like this new system. I know a lot of people have been critical on this system because the first rankings that came out when they released them were not very good because Ohio State and Texas Tech were in the top 3, and they weren't even in the top 10 of the AP poll. But I think it's gotten a little bit better since then. It's looking a lot more like very similar to the actual AP poll itself. So because you got Virginia up there, Michigan's up there, Duke's up there, so it's kind of readjusting to with more data in front of it, which I figured would happen. So I really didn't understand the panic at the time around the poll. So that's that. All right, so let me share with you guys my first projection here. As we go along, I'll mention I'll kind of dive into the resumes of some of these teams, and then at the end, after I go through the whole bracket, we'll also look at my bubble board, and we'll just talk about the teams that are kind of in the hunt for spots and look at their resumes, see why they're either in the field or not in the field at the moment. What's interesting is this, and I just looked through all the scheduled games that are being played today, and what's interesting to know is all 4 of my first 4 teams out of the field, they're in action today. So I'm looking at that going, no. But so every game is critical. So those games I'm going to definitely watch, or at least try to watch, or get some, follow the scores of those 4 teams tonight to see, how they're doing, because every game's critical. It could be a lot of shuffling depending on outcomes of games. All right, so the regional sites this year are the West is out in Anaheim, the South is out in Louisville, the East is in Washington, D.C., and the Midwest is in Kansas City. So really the only team that could not really play in its own region, of course, is Louisville. They can't play in the South, obviously, because it's being played at their own campus. So that's the only, I think, stipulation that matters there. Okay, so let's start with the East region. Top seed here, as much as I hate to say it, being a Carolina fan, it's Duke. I mean, right now, I know they lost to Syracuse at home a couple nights ago, and that was definitely stunning. But Duke's always so good. Zion Williamson is the real deal. I mean, the dunks he pulls off during games are just sick and nasty. So he's just a stud. They're always a good team. They're 14-2 this year. I'll look here. I should just have this up as I'm going along and look at these profiles. I mean, Duke has basically, they have 7 wins against the net top 100. They're 2-0 on the road. They have wins over Kentucky, Auburn, Indiana, Texas Tech. I mean, those are 4 top 30 wins alone. So, and a nice one over Florida State. So, and no bad losses. So Duke is in a really good position here. I have them taking on Wagner, the Seahawks leading the Northeast at 8-7 record overall. Usually it's a one-off. It's and now we did see a 16-1 last year, but I would honestly be shocked if that happened to Duke, honestly. Although they did lose to a 15-1 year in Lehigh. So hey, it's not a possibility, but Duke would have to have a terrible, terrible game in order for that to happen. Although Virginia had happened to them against UMBC. So not saying it won't, but with this Duke team, I doubt it. 8-9 matchup here. I think this would be a really good one. You got Iowa. No debate on Iowa this year, okay? Calm down, Hawks fans. No debate on Iowa. You guys are in. Iowa is looking really good. The Big Ten is going to get a lot of teams in this year. I have right now 10 teams in the field from the Big Ten, no bubble teams. I think all 10 of these teams that I have in the field have really solid resumes, with maybe the exception of Minnesota. Minnesota's kind of, kind of like the song "Living on the Edge," but I think right now they're okay. But right now I have 10 teams there from the Big Ten. Iowa has 7 wins against the net top 100, 14-3 record. They are 1-2 on the road, so that's a bit concerning. But you've got some really good wins in this profile against Iowa State, Nebraska, which is a great win, and Ohio State. So 3 really solid wins there. You've also got wins over Oregon, UConn, Pittsburgh, and Northwestern. So while those are top 100 teams, they're really not considered for the field. Though Pittsburgh is in the field right now as one of my last teams in the field. So Iowa, though, you're looking really good right now. I don't have to worry about them right now. They're looking really solid. I have them taking on LSU, the 9th seed out of the SEC. Tigers have a 13-3 record. They have 8 wins at the top 100. 2-1 on the road, a net of 25, 8th in the RPI, and a 14 strength of schedule. So very solid numbers for the Tigers here. Half game back at a Tennessee in the SEC. Really, I mean, their profile is not like, I mean, they have the one big win. They got the one big win yesterday at Ole Miss. That was huge. That was a huge win for the Tigers last night. But they also have some decent wins on, on this profile against some fellow local teams like St. Mary's, UNC Greensboro, Furman, beat Alabama. So they've got some stronger wins to kind of boost the profile there. But the numbers look really solid. So right now, LSU is looking in a really good spot. The 5 seed I have here is Buffalo, and Buffalo I think could be a really scary mid-major team if anybody draws them in the tournament. We saw that last year when Buffalo just blew the doors off Arizona in their first round game. This team again looks really, really solid. A 16-1 record right now, perfect 4-0 in the MAC. They have 4 wins against the top 100. 7-1 on the road. Their strength of schedule is really low at 106, but I still think even if Buffalo for some crazy reason doesn't win the MAC, I think certainly the Bulls could be considered for an at-large spot because they're 14th in the net, 17th in the RPI. They're really now their best win is not great. It's against a San Francisco team that is one of the teams that are on my bubble board considered for the field, but they also do have a nice win over Syracuse, and now that win looks a lot better considering Syracuse just beat Duke. So those two win, that Syracuse win is what I'm looking at for Buffalo right now. That's looking a lot better today than it was, for example, a couple days ago. So even though Syracuse is right now one of my last 4 teams in the field, I still think right now that that win is looking a lot better for Buffalo to boost their profile. I have them taking on Murray State. Right now, the 12 seed, 13-2 out of the Ohio Valley. Murray State also perfect in conference right now, 41 in the net. They do not have a top 100 win, so that's the big bugaboo for Murray State. If they don't win the Ohio Valley, they are probably not going to get an at-large spot because of that fact that they don't have a top 100 win at the moment, and probably won't have any opportunities to get one, considering how weak the Ohio Valley is as a conference. So I would think the Racers would have to win the conference in order to get in the field. Number 4 seed here in the East is Kentucky. Let's not kid ourselves. The Wildcats are good every single year. 13-3 record right now. They have 6 wins against the top 100. They're pretty much, it'd be an honest shock if the Wildcats did not make the tournament field. They're 12th in the net, 27th in the RPI, 45th in strength of schedule. Their best, they beat the Tar Heels. I applaud them because Kentucky just finds a way with the talent they have every year, with the great recruiting classes they get. They find a way to win games. Doesn't matter how young the team is or how one and done the team is. I hate to say it, but as much as I don't like John Calipari, his system works. They've beaten Carolina. They've beaten Louisville, which is a great win. A couple of their nice wins over UNC Greensboro, Georgia, Vanderbilt, and Texas A&M. So, but again, it'd be an utter shock if Kentucky missed the field. The Wildcats looking really good. I have them taking on Hofstra, 13th seed here out of the Colonial. The Pride looking really good right now. A 15-3 record, perfect 5-0 in conference play, 57th in the net. So that's decent for a team that's kind of a mid-major conference. But the problem is their strength of schedule is not great, 279. They are 0-2. They have no top 100 wins. So, again, this is a case of a team where they would have to win the Colonial on-mat bid for sure to get in the field. They're probably headed to the NIT if they don't win their conference title. Because they have a bad loss in the profile to Marshall, net of 123. So that doesn't help their cause either. Bottom half of the East, 6th seed here is Indiana. Hoosiers out of the Big Ten, of course, 12-5 record right now. 5-5 against the top 100. So that's pretty decent. There are 3 really good wins on this profile that really helps the Hoosiers. Marquette, that win looks better every day. With their net of 22, they beat Louisville, so they're 21. And then the Butler win. Butler's still a top 50 net team. So those 3 wins are looking the best right now, and no bad loss on this profile. Now, the only bugaboo against the Hoosiers, they are 1-4 in road games, so that hopefully that won't come back to bite them. I don't think it will, but right now they're looking really good. Indiana is just full of young talent. Especially, actually a local kid went to McCutcheon here, not very far from me, Rob Fennessy, who hit that game-winning shot to beat Butler at the Crossroads Classic. So they're just very talented on the roster. Archie Miller's done such a great job coaching this team and turning it around. So well done to the Hoosiers. I have them taking on one of the winner of the opening round games in Dayton here, the 11th seed. So these are two of my last 4 teams in the field. Oh, sorry, that's the weekly weather test. Yeah. Yes, we know it's a test. At least my radio works. Hey, at least if the winter storm hits Saturday, I know the radio works. All right. So these are two of the last 4 teams in the field. So let's look at these 2 resumes. VCU. I love my VCU Rams. I'm a huge fan of them, but their profile right now definitely screams bubble team. They don't really have a big signature win, but let's look at their profile. They're 11-5 record right now, 2-1 in the A10. Their net is at 55. Now the RPI is really good at 32, and they have a good strength of schedule at 20. But you look at some other numbers here. Only 3-4 against the net top 100. So that's not exactly, a great mark. So that means a lot of VCU's wins have come against, below top 100 teams. The vast majority of them, in fact. And they're 2-3 away from home. VCU plays really well at home. The Havoc lives here. Their environment at home is a great environment, but they've got to start winning games away from home. And their best wins, really, can you really find a signature win among this bunch? Temple at 44 net, I have them in a bubble team. Texas at 46, I have them as one of the last 4 buys. And then Hofstra, as a conference leader at 57. But really, there is no signature win among that bunch. And VCU did have opportunities in the non-conference to do that, and they didn't get the job done. And they do have a bad loss on the profile to Charleston with a net of 104. So this clearly right now is a very bubbly profile. But to me, I think VCU, those wins, while not off the wall impressive, they're still beating teams that are either, for sure in the tournament, like Hofstra right now, or in the mix. So those wins are decent enough, I think, to push them in the field over some other teams that don't have that kind of profile. And I have them playing Pittsburgh. Let's look at Pittsburgh's profile. I looked at a lot of other projections just to do some research, and a lot of people did not have Pittsburgh in the field. I think Pittsburgh should be in, again, based on their net number and based on the 2 big wins they've had lately. I think pushes them over the top. Pitt is 12-5. They are 2-2 in the ACC. Now, the net is a little low at 52, but again, that's kind of like VCU territory, so it's kind of that same vein. I know the other number's a little bit high. The RPI is at 88, strength of schedule 119. That's a little bit on the high side, but why I have Pitt in the field is because of 2 big recent wins. They've beaten Louisville, who's in the field, and Florida State, who's safely in the field. So I think those wins are huge for this profile. They also went over St. Louis, who leads the A10. So 3-4 against the top 100. So again, kind of the same vein as VCU, but I think Pittsburgh's wins really, really help this profile out. Now, they do have a bad loss on the profile to Niagara. That's a really ugly loss. Niagara's net is 304. That's a really bad loss. And they are 0-3 in true road games. So Pittsburgh certainly could get off this line with another big win or 2, but they could certainly fall back out of the field with another bad loss. So Pittsburgh is very, very tenuous right now. That's why they're on this 11th spot. But I think with those wins they've had recently, I think for now they're okay, but they're certainly – I think they're in a more precarious spot than, say, VCU. Because I think VCU at least has some decent wins over teams that are close to being in the field. Pittsburgh, has wins right now over 2 tournament teams. It's actually pretty close. The only thing keeping Pittsburgh down is those numbers that are, the RPI numbers, the SOS numbers, the bad loss. That's why they're kind of tenuous. It's very close between those 2. But one bad loss could knock either team out. 3 seed in the East. My Tar Heels. Huge win last night. I was worried for a lot of that game last night because I was really thinking Notre Dame was going to pull it off because Notre Dame was playing really, really well. I give a lot of credit to Notre Dame, but they played a real nice game last night on Carolina's floor, but the Tar Heels came back, got it done, and that was absolutely huge. Tar Heels are 13-4. They are 3-1 in the ACC. The numbers look really solid across the board. 11th in the net, 20th in the RPI, 15th in strength of schedule. They have 7 wins against the top 100, 4-1 in road games. It definitely looks like a team that's going to be lock, stock, pretty much in the field. They've got some very impressive wins. They've beaten Gonzaga. They've beaten NC State. They've beaten Davidson, who's in the hunt. They've beaten Pitt, who I have in the field. They've beaten Wofford, who right now is leading the Southern Conference, and who's a really good team, and who remember Wofford beat Carolina in the opener last year, and they got some nice revenge this year. So, excuse me. So Carolina looking really good. Absolutely. I have them taking on Princeton. The Tigers right now leading the Ivy League. Of course, the Ivy is always fluid. It can always change on a day-to-day basis. But right now, the Tigers are 2-0 in conference play. They are 9-5 overall, a net of 180. So, again, that's a little bit on the high side, hence why they're a 14 seed. But they do have a top 100 win to their name. They did beat Arizona State on the Sun Devils' home floor in overtime. So that was a huge win for Princeton and a huge confidence booster. They do have a bad loss in this profile to Fairleigh Dickinson, the 230. They're 5-3 though away from home, so that's huge as well. The Ivy League obviously normally does not get an at-large team. In fact, I think it's never happened before. So a team like Yale, for example, Yale is a top 100 net team, but I don't see the Ivy League ever getting an at-large spot. So right now, that's why I only have Princeton in. I'm not really considering Yale as a bubble team. Seventh seed in the East goes to Iowa State. The Cyclones, they're always one of the toughest outs in the Big 12, especially at home at the Hilton Coliseum. 12-4 record. They're 2-2 in the conference. Net of 26, RPI at 45, and they strength the schedule 65. They have 3 top 100 victories. They're 3-4, but of course the big win of that bunch is the win over Kansas, which was massive for the Cyclones. They do also have nice wins over Oklahoma State and Missouri. No bad loss on the profile. They are 1-2 on the road, so that could be boosted a little bit. But aside from that, this looks like a really solid team, looking really good. Now here's the 10 seed. One of my 10 seeds on the kind of the last 4 buys line, and that's Minnesota. Minnesota certainly, I think, has the most kind of precarious profile of the Big Ten teams. Like, it's not the safest profile, but here's the thing about Minnesota: they've had 2 really good wins lately that have kept them in the field. So we look at their profile; they're 3-2 in the Big Ten, 13-3 overall, a net of 45. So that is the lowest net of any of the Big Ten teams I have in the field right now. But the RPI at 26 and the 50 at strength of schedule. So those are really solid numbers. They do have 5 wins against the top 100. However, only 3 of those wins are against current tournament teams that I have in the field. Nebraska, which was a huge win for them. Wisconsin, big win. And Washington, who I have as one of the last 4 teams in the field. So that's going to help Minnesota's profile as long as Nebraska and Wisconsin keep doing well and Washington stays above water. That's going to really help this profile out a lot. Now, Minnesota is 1-2 in road games. They do tend to play better at home than on the road. So again, that could be helped a little bit. But right now, Minnesota, I think, is in a really more solid position as other teams below them. But they certainly are the most tenuous in the Big Ten. They'll do a bad loss in the profile. They did lose to Boston College with a net of 140. So that's why they're kind of in a rough position here. Michigan State is the 2 seed here. Sparty, another great year for Michigan State. 6-0 in the conference right now, 15-2 record overall. They have 8 wins against the net top 100. They are 7th themselves, 4-1 in road games. They have wins over Texas, Iowa, Ohio State, Purdue. Those 4 alone are really, really solid wins against tournament teams. They've also beaten UCLA. Florida, Northwestern, and Penn State, who are also in the top 100 but not considered right now for the field. So this, again, is Tom Izzo, the job that he does, you can't give him enough credit for what he does at Michigan State. Really solid team. So they right now are my 2 seed in the East. And I have them taking on Bucknell. Bucknell right now leading the Patriot League with a 4-1 conference record, 10-7 overall. They are 175 in the net. They do have one top 100 win that came against Vermont, who's currently leading the America East, but they also have 3 bad losses. So Bucknell, of course, would have to win the Patriot automatic bid to ensure their spot. It's going to be a 1-bid league for sure. All right, let's go to the South region. Let's start off at the top. Of course, number 1 seed here is Tennessee. I mean, the Volunteers, very impressive season thus far. 15-1 record, 4-0 in the SEC. The numbers look very impressive here. A net of 3, RPI also at 3, strength of schedule at 21. They have 8 wins against the net top 100, beating teams like Louisville, Gonzaga, and really now those 2, I would say, of those 8 are the only 2 right now that I'm really considering. Although Georgia Tech, I think I have under consideration, but they're not. But obviously they're off the board at the moment. They've also beaten Memphis, Georgia, Missouri, Florida, Arkansas. So some of those teams are on the consideration list. Some of them aren't. So they don't have they have 2 big wins, but the numbers are strong enough. They're 3-0 on the road. This team is looking really good. They're in a really good position. Have them taking on Sam Houston State. Right now, the Bearcats are leading the Southland Conference with a 3-0 record, 8-8 overall. The Southland really is wide open right now. There's some really good teams up there at the top. Abilene Christian also could be a team that could potentially come out of this conference, but right now they're not leading the conference, so that's why I have Sam Houston State in the field. The Bearcats, a 216 net rating. No wins against the top 100, and do have a bad loss to 229 Little Rock. But again, it's I don't see them holding on to that top spot for too long because Abilene Christian has looked really good this year. They'll probably take that top spot eventually, but for now, it goes to the Bearcats because they lead the conference. Excuse me. 8 seed is Ohio State. 8 seed is Ohio State, again, out of the Big Ten with its 10 representatives here in the field. Ohio State looks really solid to me. They've got, they are 2-3 in the Big Ten, but they're still a 12-4 record, net of 35, an RPI of 41, and a strength of schedule at 53, which all looks really solid. 4 wins against the top 100, but 3 of those wins are right now 2 teams are in the field right now, and 1 is very close to being in the field. Cincinnati and Minnesota are their 2 wins right now against tournament teams. Creighton is one of my first 4 teams out of the field right now. But certainly that's not a bad win by any stretch. And they also beat UCLA, who's, of course, far from them. They are the top 100 team at 92. And they are 3-2 on the road, so that certainly helps. They do have 1 bad loss on the profile, that unexplainable loss to Rutgers. But aside from that, this team looks really, really solid. So right now, Ohio State is in a really good position. I have them taking on the 9 seed St. John's out of the Big East. St. John's right now also 2-3 conference record, 14-3 record overall, a net of 37, an RPI of 35. Now the strength schedule is a little high at 82, but again, this is a pretty solid profile. 4-3 against the top 100. They do have wins over VCU and Marquette. So again, 2 teams that right now are pretty much either in the field. Marquette safely in, VCU kind of fighting for a spot. And then they've also beaten Georgia Tech and Georgetown, 2 top 100 teams as well. Now, this profile has no bad losses on it, so this really, really helps St. John's cause in that regard. They don't have unlike Ohio State, they don't have a bad loss on the profile. So that's really solid. So St. John's looking really good. The 5 seed here is Florida State. Florida State's out of the ACC, 13-4 record. Now, they are 1-3 in conference play, but again, the profile really helps this out. Florida State, you look at the numbers, 34 in the net, 21 in the RPI, and the 17th hardest strength of schedule. That really helps the Seminoles here. They have 6 wins, 6-4 against the net top 100. They have wins over LSU, Purdue, and conference leader St. Louis. along with wins over Florida, UConn, and Miami. So, again, half their wins of the top 100 are against tournament teams right now. So that really helps Florida State's profile here. They are 1-2 on the road, so again, more road wins could really help this profile a bit. But right now, they're in a really good position. No bad losses to weigh this profile down. Florida State looking really good. I have them taking on Wofford, and Wofford could be a real, again, could again be one of those bracket busters, a really dangerous number 12 seed. Because I've seen Wofford play before. I saw them as always play against Carolina these past couple of years, and they play really well, especially when they shoot the ball well. If Wofford gets into a rhythm offensively, they could be a really scary team. Let's look at their profile here. 14-4 record overall. They're a perfect 6-0 in the Southern Conference, a net of 31. So that is something to consider. If this Wofford team, again, if they don't get the automatic bid in the Southern, maybe you take a look at that number and think maybe. But then you also look at the fact that their RPI is at 49, but their strength of schedule is only at 117. That doesn't help their cause. And the fact that really their 2 top 100 wins are only against their fellow conference bubble teams in East Tennessee State and UNC Greensboro. So they really don't have a jump-off-the-page win. Had they beaten North Carolina earlier in the year, then maybe we'd be talking about them more as a true, at-large potential team. But right now, they're going to have to win the Southern Tournament, I think, for sure, to get in the field. They're not really going to have a chance to, get any more big-time quality wins against, big competition. But for now, as the conference leader, they're in the field. The 4 seed is Houston. I mean, Kelvin Sampson, the job that he has done with the Cougars is nothing short of amazing. I mean, look, the guy can coach. Don't get me wrong. Are his practices sometimes get universities into trouble, like Indiana? Yeah. Or Oklahoma? Yeah. But you can't fault what he's doing at Houston right now. The Cougars are absolutely amazing. 3-1 record in conference play in the American, a 16-1 overall record. The only loss was that controversial loss to Temple with the foul at the end. But a net of 9, an RPI of 11. The strength schedule is a little low at 73, but they have 6 wins against the top 100. They have wins over LSU, conference leader St. Louis, which is really good. They do have a nice win over Utah State, who's fighting for a spot, and also wins over Oregon, Oklahoma State, and Memphis. So, again, a very solid team here. No bad losses, again, to weigh down the profile. Houston looking really, really good. Haven't taken on UTSA, as I mentioned. The Roadrunners leading Conference USA right now. Let's see, where are they? There they are. 4-0 record in Conference USA, perfect record, 10-7. Remember, and they beat North Texas, so that's why they are ahead in conference play, because they beat the Mean Green to get this spot. So 10-7 record, again, that's their best win. That's really the only win against a top 100 team. They are 3-1 on road games, but they have 4 bad losses weighing down this profile, including a loss to a non-Division I team in St. Edwards. Wow. So, yeah, they are going to have to win the conference to get in. But let's look at North Texas because, again, North Texas has played really good basketball this year. But, again, I think this is an example of a team that really has to win the conference to get in. I don't see them getting an at-large spot. Even though they've got a 16-2 record with 4-1 in conference play, they have a net of 60. That's decent, and an RPI 54. But the 265 strength of schedule, that's going to hurt. And they only have 1 top 100 win in their name against Louisiana Tech, along with that loss to UTSA. So that's really, it's not an at-large profile. So I think really North Texas is going to have to win the Conference USA tournament to get in on that bid. They're not going to get in otherwise. Bottom half of the South. 6 seed, Wisconsin. I mean, it's not the tournament. We don't talk about Wisconsin, right? I mean, the Badgers usually always get in every year. This is a really good-looking profile as well. Now, the record doesn't scream it at 11-6, and they're 3-3 in the Big Ten, but the teams they've beaten are very impressive. That's why their net's at 19, the RPI at 40, a strength schedule at 24. They're 5-5 against the top 100. They've beaten Oklahoma, NC State, and Iowa. Those 3 right there are surefire tournament teams at the moment. So, and then they also wins over Xavier, who's fighting for a spot, and Penn State. So now they do have 1 bad loss to Western Kentucky, but that's really not weighing this profile down too much. The good wins really cancel out that 1 bad loss. So, and they're 3-3 in road games, which is pretty decent for a team that tends to play better at home. So Wisconsin looking really solid right now. I have them taking on Kansas State, and Kansas State of late has been, speaking of hot teams, we want to talk about hot teams. Kansas State has really been on a tear in the Big 12. They've gotten some really nice wins lately to really boost their profile. Now, they are on the 11 line, and I have as one of the last 4 buys in the field, so certainly not safe by any stretch, but these big wins of late have really kind of boosted them to a safer position. They are 12-4 overall. They are 2-2 in conference play. They have a net of 53. So, again, that's a little bit low, but that's why they're in this position. But their RPI is good at 26 and a 31 strength of schedule. They do have 4 wins against the top 100. The only problem is only one of those wins against a tournament team, and that's the one they recently had against Iowa State. But they do have wins over Vanderbilt, Missouri, and West Virginia, which are also top 100 wins, just not considered right now off the field. So if Kansas State can get some more big wins against sure tournament teams, then they'll be off this line for sure. They'll definitely move up a couple lines if they can get some more quality wins added to their resume. They do have a bad loss to Tulsa, and they're 1-3 on the road. So if they can get more big wins and more wins on the road, then Kansas State will definitely move off this 11 line. But for now, I think they're in just because of the fact that, the Big 12 is really strong. The big win over Iowa State certainly helps, and the numbers look really good. So that's why I have Kansas State in the field. 3 seed, Virginia Tech. And I know Virginia Tech, they lost to Virginia last night, and they lost really bad, but Virginia's a really good team. Let's not kid ourselves. Virginia Tech here, though, still looked really solid. 3-1 in conference play, 14-2 overall record, 8th in the net, 30th in the RPI. Now, they do have a really bad strength of schedule at 161, but they are beating really good teams, so that's helping their profile as well, along with having no bad losses. 5 wins against the net top 100, 5-2. They've beaten Purdue. That's really their only win against a sure tournament team, but they've also beaten Washington, who's in the mix. Actually, Washington I do have in the field. So there's 2 wins against tournament teams right now. They've beaten Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, and a nice win over Ball State, whose net is still at 88. So Virginia Tech looks really, really solid right now. No reason to really put them in a precarious spot. They're beating good teams. They're playing hard. Even though they lost to Virginia, that's nothing to be ashamed about. I have them taking on South Dakota State, the 14th seed here. The Jackrabbits, once again, leading the Summit League right now. It always seems like the Jackrabbits come out of the Summit League. They're just a really good basketball team. 4-1 in conference play, 14-6 the overall record. A 115 net rating right now, but again, so not going to be a team that's going to make a push for an at-large spot. They have no top 100 wins to their name right now, and they have 4 bad losses weighing down this profile. So that is including to Florida Gulf Coast at 270, Tulane at 302, Montana 118, and then losing to Purdue Fort Wayne at 205. So this clearly not an at-large situation for South Dakota State. They must win the Summit to get in the field. 7 seeds Mississippi State. Bulldogs 13-3 out of the SEC. They are 1-2 in conference play, so that's a bit of a concern. But they do have some nice wins on this profile. Look at their numbers here. Net of 33, RPI at 35, and a 54 strength of schedule. They have 6 wins against the top 100. You look here, though, who they've beaten. Cincinnati is a great win. Wofford, obviously, is a great win, a conference leader. But that's the only 2 wins really right now against surefire tournament teams. They've also beaten St. Mary's, who's in the hunt. Dayton's on my consideration board, Clemson, and Florida. So they do have a bad loss to South Carolina. But aside from that, this profile looks really, really good. Really good position here for Mississippi State. They should be okay for now. And I have them taking on UCF, the 10 seed here. UCF leading the American. 3-0 record, perfect. 13-2 overall mark, 32 in the net, so that looks really strong. 34 RPI. Now they do have a 103 strength of schedule. That's kind of on the high side. Really, they only have, and here's the thing though, right now for UCF, though, it really kind of hurts them in terms of if they don't hold the conference lead, they probably won't be in the field because right now they have no wins against tournament teams right now. They have 3 top 100 wins, but none of those. And for me, are against top 100 or against tournament teams. Temple is my first team out. Alabama is in the mix, but they're my next 4 out, and they've beaten UConn, and UConn's not even close to the tournament right now. So They didn't have a bad loss to Florida Atlantic. So this is a precarious spot for UCF. UCF is only going to be in the field as long as they can hold on to the conference lead. So that is a very precarious spot for UCF to be in. 2 seed is Kansas. Rock chalk. I mean, the Jayhawks, even without Azubuike, who is out for the year, I believe, with a broken hand, they are still playing solid basketball. And Bill Self still does a great job with this team. We look at Kansas's numbers here. I mean, think about Kansas. They schedule tough every year, and yet they beat the teams they play. Kansas has the toughest strength of schedule in the country. They are 15-2, 4-1 in the Big 12, but they have the toughest schedule. They're first actually in RPI. They're 13th in net. They're first in RPI, but they have the toughest strength of schedule. They have, of the 15 games that they have won, 11 of them are against top 100 teams. That is insane. They have beaten Michigan State, Marquette, Tennessee, Wofford, Villanova, Oklahoma, TCU, and Texas. Those are 8 sure tournament teams right now that Kansas has beaten. Kansas, barring a extreme collapse, is going to be a high seed on Selection Sunday. It's just amazing that they schedule all these tough teams and they just beat them all the time. And some of those games actually are really, really close. This Kansas team has given me a lot of mini heart attacks this year because of how close some of these games are. But they get it done. They find a way to get the job done. I have them playing Winthrop out of the Big South. And it's usually Winthrop that comes out of the Big South, or Radford. But the Big South, tends to change a lot, week to week. But Winthrop, 3-0 in conference play, 11-5 overall. They have a 112 net right now, but they have no top 100 wins to their title. They have no bad losses either, so I guess that helps. But they would have to win the conference. The Big South's a one-bid league, so whoever wins it is getting in. Moving on to the West region. Let's look at the West region. Top seed here, Virginia. I mean, Virginia has to be on the top line somewhere. I mean, Virginia. And we know there's for a long time going to be the laughingstocks. They lost to UMBC last year, but Virginia still gets the job done. 4-0 in conference play, 16-0 record, perfect overall. Big win against Virginia Tech last night. They are first in the net. This is the number 1 team in the net ratings. 7th in RPI. Now they're 87th in strength of schedule, so that's not a great number, but they're winning games. 7 wins against the top 100. They have beaten Wisconsin. They have beaten Maryland. They have beaten Florida State. They've now beat Virginia Tech. They have 4 wins against sure tournament teams. Also a nice win over VCU, who's fighting for a spot, and they've also beaten Clemson and Dayton. So this is a really solid profile. Virginia looking really, really good. I have them playing one of the winners from Dayton, one of the play-in games. You look at the Horizon League right now. It's Detroit leading the way in the Horizon League. 5-1 conference record, but an 8-10 overall record. So, again, this is definitely one of the play-in game team here. Actually, all my teams in the play-in games have losing records. So I think that would be a first for the 16 line for Dayton if all the teams had losing records. I thought my watch keeps thinking I'm doing a workout. That's kind of weird. But Detroit here, 5-1 conference record, 8-10 overall, a net of 166. They have no top 100 wins to their name. So again, this has to be a situation where you got to win the conference to get in. Horizon usually one bid league anyway. And then you've got Norfolk State in the MEAC. Now they are a perfect 4-0 in conference play, 9-10 overall record, a net of 260, and they have 2 bad losses. So again, a situation where they got to win the conference to get in. 8 seed here in the West. Another team very close to my heart, my TCU Horned Frogs. Now TCU, of course, of late has been struggling of late. But they did get a big win over West Virginia last night. Big blowout win. I think they won by like 31 points. It was huge. And they're doing this even without Jalen Fisher, who is out indefinitely because of an injury. So this is just very impressive what we're seeing from Jamie Dixon's team. We look at the Frogs here, 13-3 record, 2-2 in conference play now. a net of 29, a solid RPI of 9, and a strength of schedule of 14. So all very good numbers here. They do have 3 top 100 wins, but again, here's the problem with that, though. None of those wins are against tournament teams. The West Virginia win is nice. It's a top 100 win, but the Mountaineers are nowhere close to the field. They're at 96 in the net. Fresno State at 67. Again, a decent win, but nowhere close to the field. And then you got Basecom, a.k.a. Baylor, at 65. That's really their best win. So they don't have a win against a tournament team right now, but the numbers look too solid to keep this team out of the field. But that's why they're on the 8 line because, again, their profile just doesn't have that marquee win to it. And without Fisher, it's going to be a lot harder to get one down the stretch. So unless they pull off a surprise or two in conference play, TCU's going to be around this seed line for a good while. I have them playing Cincinnati out of the American, the 9 seed here, 15-3 record. I did not fix that on my sheet. To think, I thought I fixed all of these, and I didn't. Excuse me again. I don't know why my throat's full of phlegm. Cincinnati, 15-3 record overall, 4-1 in the American Athletic Conference. Net of 36 and RPI of 36. Those are exactly the same, so that's good. 88 strength of schedule. You're playing the American. It's going to be really low. It's rough. It's understandable. They have 5 top 100 wins. However, only 1 against a sure tournament team, that being Ole Miss. Xavier, I have fighting for a spot on the next 4 out. They also have wins against UCLA, Connecticut, and South Florida last night. But again, those are, yes, they are top 100 wins, but they're not in the mix. So they're only 2-2 on the road, and they do have a bad loss to East Carolina at 221. So again, they're in a rough patch here, but they do have the 1 big win, so that's why they're kind of in this 8, 9, 10 territory. But Cincinnati still looks like a really solid team. And unless something drastic happens, they straight up collapse. I don't think they'll miss the field, but stranger things have happened. 5 seed, Marquette. Marquette out of the Big East looking really good this year. Marquette 4-1 in conference play, 15-3 overall, 22nd in the net, 24th in RPI, 51 in strength of schedule. So those are all really solid numbers. This team is kind of like Kansas. They have 8 wins, 8 of their 15 wins against the top 100. They've beaten Louisville. They've beaten Kansas State, who I have in the field. They've beaten Wisconsin, Buffalo, Seton Hall. So 5 of their 8 top 100 wins have come against sure tournament teams right now. And they've beaten Xavier, who's in the mix. So, and they also have wins over Georgetown. And they've beaten Creighton, who's one of my first 4 teams out. So, again, they've beaten a really solid bunch. No bad loss to weigh his profile down. Marquette looking really, really solid here. I have them taking on Liberty out of the Atlantic Sun. Liberty right now, I give them the nod over Lipscomb because of better overall record and the fact that they're 1 spot better in the net. That's why I was really debating which team I should put in the Atlantic Sun, but I was going to give it to Liberty because, again, better record and better net. 3-0 in conference play, 14-4 overall record. They are 47th in the net. But they only have 1 top 100 win, which came against UCLA, which really isn't a great win, and they have a bad loss to Austin Peay. So this is an example of a team where Liberty would have to, for sure, win the conference tournament to get in. But does Lipscomb? Lipscomb really has a really interesting profile. And I've talked about Lipscomb on here or on other shows briefly because I said that Lipscomb could be a really scary team if they get in the field because they've already beaten TCU at TCU this year. That's really what's carrying this profile right now. I have Lipscomb right now as one of my first 4 teams out of the field. So let's look at Lipscomb just briefly. 3-0 in the conference. They are 12-4 overall, 48th in the net, so 1 spot down from Liberty, 64th in the RPI, and a 159 strength of schedule. So those are decent, but they have 2 top 100 wins. Again, the win at TCU was massive. And then beating Vermont, who leads the America East, also a very good win. No bad losses in this profile, and 5-3 in road games. So Lipscomb very much is in this discussion. They certainly have an at-large case here. But in terms of, the other teams that are ahead of them, that fact they look just a little bit better than Lipscomb right now, that's why I have them just barely out of the field. But certainly they have a really good case. So if they keep playing well, if they eventually lead the conference and get in because of that, they're going to be scary. I would not want to play Lipscomb in the NCAA tournament. I really wouldn't right now. The way they shoot the ball, if they shoot it well, they're kind of like Wofford. If they get in an offensive rhythm, they're a scary team. So just keep that in mind. Let's see. Oh, yeah, back to the West. 4th seed here, Auburn. Auburn out of the SEC. Again, another team that has done really, really well this year. Again, the job that Bruce Pearl has done with this team is amazing. 12-3 record, 1-1 in the SEC, 18th in the net, 18th in RPI, 23rd in strength of schedule. They have 6 wins against the top 100. They have beaten Washington, who I have in the field. They have beaten Murray State, who is a conference leader. So that's 2 wins over sure teams. They've beaten Xavier, who's in the hunt, Dayton, that's in the hunt for a spot, and Arizona also, who's in the field as a conference leader. So there's 3 wins over tournament teams, and they've beaten Georgia. And no bad losses way down this profile. So that's really, really solid across the board. Now, they are 0-2 on true road games, so that kind of hurts a bit. But aside from that, this profile looks really good. Auburn looks like a really good basketball team. I'm taking on Vermont. Vermont out of the America East. The Catamounts leading right now with a 3-0 conference record, 13-4 overall. To think that Vermont really, could have been in the tournament last year had they not lost on the buzzer beater against UMBC, but then we wouldn't have gotten the upset with UMBC over Virginia. Think about that. But Vermont usually is one of the classes of this conference. They're a really good team. 13-4 record. They're 85th in the net. So, again, this would be a case where you'd have to win the conference tournament to get in the field. 50 in the RPI, though, so that's decent. But a 136 strength of schedule, only 1 win against the top 100 that came against Yale, and a bad loss to Bucknell. So again, it's going to be a one-bid league, but right now Vermont does have the conference lead. 6th seed is NC State. NC State, 14-3 record overall, 2-2 in conference play. They are 16th in the net, which is really, really good. But the other numbers to me are just staggeringly low. Excuse me. Their RPI is 114. I am blown away that their RPI is that low. I cannot believe that. And their strength of schedule, 323. I'm just so surprised that all those numbers are that low, because considering they have 5 top 100 wins, they're only 1-1 in road games. Let's see, and really 2 of their 5 wins came against tournament teams right now. The Auburn win looks really good, and they beat Pitt, even though Pitt's one of the last 4 teams in the field. So, and the other wins don't look as great. And maybe that's why this profile isn't as great as it looks. And they have a bad loss to Wake Forest. So, again, I mean, the net number alone makes the seed high, but certainly this isn't a safe team by any stretch. It's not. With a bad loss or 2, it could quickly fall down the seed lines here, because they're really, aside from the Auburn win, there's not really a win that jumps off the page and says, "Wow, this is a great win." So, yeah, I'm just kind of surprised the numbers are that low for their spots. I have them taking on Arizona. Arizona right now leading the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is just down as a whole. And the Pac-12 right now, I only have getting 2 teams in the field. It's just a very down year for the Pac-12. 13-4 record, though, 4-0 in conference play. A net of 51, 43 in the RPI, 72 strength of schedule. They do have 3 wins against the top 100, but again, they only have 1 of those against a sure tournament team, and that's Iowa State. They've beaten UConn and Colorado, but they are nowhere near the tournament field. No bad losses, so that helps them, which puts them on this 11 line. And 3-1 in road games. So, again, it's going to be one of the weaker conference winners, obviously. So that's why Arizona is going to be such a low seed. But, you're a conference champ, you get in. So, there you go. 3 seed, Oklahoma, out of the Big 12, the Sooners. 13-3 record. 2-2 in the conference. This is another profile filled with top 100 wins, and the numbers look really good here. 15th in the net, second in RPI, second in strength schedule, so right behind Kansas because they have 9 wins against the top 100. We look at who they've beaten. They have a win over Wofford. They've beaten Creighton. They've beaten TCU. So actually not as many as Kansas. They have only 3 of their 9 wins are against sure tournament teams right now. They've also beaten Florida, Dayton, North Texas, Notre Dame, Northwestern, and Oklahoma State. So again, none of those teams are even in the discussion right now. But still a really solid profile here. 3-2 in road games. Oklahoma is a really good basketball team. They show it every night. They're really good. I have them taking on another one of my favorite teams, the UC Irvine Anteaters. Anteaters. I love it. They're doing so well this year. I'm so impressed by what I'm seeing from UC Irvine. 2-0 in conference play. 14-4 in the Big West. And they have a net of 102, but an RPI of 77, which actually is really strong. 206 is strength schedule. So again, they'll have to win the conference obviously to get in, but they do have 2 top 100 wins, although none against tournament teams. They've beaten Texas A&M with 83 and St. Mary's, who's kind of in the mix at 54. They have a bad loss though to Pacific. They lost to Pacific in overtime. So, but again, right now they're looking like the best team in the Big West, and I'd be shocked if anyone else really comes out of that right now because the Eaters look really good. Number 7 seed here in the West region. Team under this one, Purdue. Let's look at the Boilermakers. Big win last night against Rutgers. They cannot afford a loss to Rutgers, but they got the job done. Big win at home. 4-2 now in the Big Ten. Now the 11-6 record, that's certainly not great by any stretch, but again, the numbers really help this profile, and certainly the wins help this profile as well, and the fact there's no bad losses on the resume. A net of 20, an RPI of 19, a strength of schedule of 3. So Purdue has played the 3rd toughest schedule in the country behind Kansas and Oklahoma. That's saying a lot. And like I said, they had chances in the non-con to beat some good teams, and they couldn't do it. So, but they have beaten Maryland, who's a surefire tournament team. They've beaten Iowa and Wisconsin. So 3 of the 6 right there are pretty much going to be surefire tournament teams, barring some surprise. They also have wins over Davidson, who's certainly in the discussion for a spot, Ball State early in the year, and then Belmont. So, so yeah, this is looking like a really good profile. Now, again, Purdue doesn't play better at home than on the road. They're 1-4 in true road games. That doesn't help this profile at all, but everything else does. So really, that's really the only knock on this profile is that they're not good on the road. But aside from that, everything about Purdue looks really, really good. I have them taking on UNLV. UNLV right now leading the Mountain West. 3-0 conference record, 9-6 overall. Again, the only reason they're in the field right now is because they are leading the conference. They would not be in if they were not leading the conference, but since they're leading, they're in. 148 of nets. They have no top 100 wins to their name, and they have 4 bad losses on the profile. So the only reason UNLV is in the field right now is because they are leading the Mountain West. Because obviously Nevada right now is the other team. Nevada is probably going to get in for sure. I would say Nevada. If Nevada doesn't win the Mountain West, I think certainly they're probably going to get in as an at-large because Nevada is that good of a basketball team. The 2 seed here in the West is Gonzaga. Again, let's not kid ourselves. Gonzaga has become a staple of the West Coast Conference every year. They're a really good team. The job that Mark Few has done, nothing short of outstanding. Gave Carolina a really good game in the championship a couple years ago. And I just applaud them for how far they've come over this time since we didn't even hear of them back in the 90s. Like how do we pronounce that? Gonzaga. How do we pronounce that name? No one knew how to say it. No one knew where they were located. We didn't even, they were a Cinderella story. So, but now they are legit. We now know who they are. 16-2 record overall, 3-0 in the West Coast, a net of 6, RPI of 13, strength of schedule of 39, 6 top 100 wins to their name. They've beaten Duke, which is a huge win in of itself. They've beaten Creighton, who's in the mix, Washington, who's one of my last teams in the field, and they've also had wins over San Francisco and Arizona. So 4 teams they've beaten that are in the tournament right now, and Texas A&M. No bad losses. This is a solid profile as they come. I have them taking on Northern Colorado out of the Big Sky. Bears right now lead the conference with a 5-1 conference record, 11-6 overall. They have a 196 net. So again, they have to win the conference to get in. No top 100 wins in their profile, and 1 bad loss in the profile to SIUE at 319. So they're leading the conference right now, so they are in. All right. Midwest region, last region now. Gee, I wonder who the other number 1 seed could be. Oh, let's not kid ourselves. It's Michigan. Come on. You knew it had to be Michigan. You know this was coming. It's Michigan. I mean, Michigan is absolutely insane this year. 17-0 record. 6-0 in the Big Ten. They are actually second in the net, which is surprising. They're second in the net, I think, behind Virginia. But Virginia is also undefeated, so I guess that makes sense. They're 7th at RPI. They're 80th in strength of schedule, but they're winning games. That doesn't matter. They've beaten Villanova. They've beaten my Tar Heels. They've beaten Purdue. They've beaten IU. This team is just so good. The talent they have up and down the roster. John Beilein, the job that he has done with this program is, again, nothing short of outstanding. They've been in the Final Fours. They've been to the final game and lost multiple times the past couple years. So they come so close every year and just can't get over that hump. So, but this team looks like if it could be any team to do it, this could be the team to do it. They also have wins over Providence. They've swept Northwestern twice, and they've beaten Penn State. So this is a really good basketball team, and I think this potentially could be their year. If any year to do it, this could be it. Have them taking on, again, one of the other play-in winners from Dayton, UMKC, Missouri, Kansas City out of the WAC. Kangaroos right now lead the conference with a 2-0 conference record, 7-10 overall record. Again, the WAC is usually one of those wide open conferences. It's probably going to be New Mexico State that ends up winning the conference because the Aggies usually are the staple of the conference. But right now they don't lead the conference, so they're not in the field. 235 though in the net. No top 100 wins and 3 bad losses. So, and I'd have them playing Arkansas Pine Bluff, who right now is leading the SWAC. 3-0 conference record, 6-10 overall. But again, 303, so the nets. That's why they're here. No good wins, but no bad losses either. So, 8th seed, Ole Miss. Ole Miss has been a nice surprise of late. They've gotten some really big wins to boost this profile. 13-3 record overall, 3-1 in the SEC, a net of 23, a RPI of 36, and a strength of schedule at 77. They have 4 wins against the top 100, but the 2 that really stand out are the last 2, Auburn and Mississippi State, 2 teams that are safely in the field right now. So they've also beaten Bay Scum and Vanderbilt, but they look really, really good right now. 3-1 also in road games. No bad losses way down the profile. This is looking like a really solid team. I have them playing Seton Hall. I mean, and when is Seton Hall not in one of these like 8, 9, 10 lines, with their profile? The Seton Hall is always one of those teams where they're really just scrapping for a spot. The Big East kind of scraps itself anyway because it's such a tough conference. Pirates are 12-6. They are 3-3 in the Big East, a net of 39, a RPI of 22, strength of schedule of 12. All those are really solid numbers. This is actually a pretty solid profile. 6-6 against the top 100. They have wins over Kentucky, which is a huge win, Maryland, which is another great win, St. John's, and so 3 of their 6 wins are against sure tournament teams. They also went over Miami, and they have wins over bubble teams Xavier and Butler. This is a really, it's a decent profile. But again, it could be better. 2-4 on the road. That's also kind of a bugaboo. If they can get, maybe at least 1 more quality win or 2, I think Seton Hall will be in a lot better position. But for now, solidly in the field. 5 seed here is Maryland. Maryland has looked really good this year as well. The Terps 6-1 in the Big Ten, 15-3 overall. All the numbers across the board check the box. 17th in the net, 18th in the RPI, 23rd in strength of schedule, 7 wins against the top 100, including wins over Nebraska, Minnesota, Indiana, Wisconsin, Hofstra. I mean, actually, that's 6 wins. So this team is looking just really, really good. 3-1 in road games. That always helps. So that's 5 sure right now tournament teams that Maryland has wins against. Again, it would take a catastrophic failure at this point for Maryland to not make the field. They look really, really solid. And I have them playing one of my other play-in winners here. So this is on the 12 line. Here's the last 2 teams right now that I have in the field. One is Syracuse. And why should we be surprised by that at this point? It's always Syracuse. Syracuse should build like a permanent training facility in Dayton, Ohio, because that's they're in Dayton every year. They're in Dayton every year. Have you not noticed that? They play in the play-in round every year, but they're a bubbly team. They have a bubbly resume. Let's take a look at it. They are 3-1 in the ACC. That's good. 12-5 record. Very good. But a net of 49. That's definitely in bubble territory. 47th in the RPI. 29 straight to schedule. That's good. They're 5-5 against the top 100. So they don't have any bad losses to weigh this profile down. So that certainly helps them. But who have they beaten? They've only beaten now 2 sure tournament teams. Ohio State and, of course, the win over Duke certainly helps. It really helps this profile. But there are other wins against Clemson, Notre Dame, and Georgetown. None of those scream impressive. Now, the good thing for Syracuse is they are starting to win away from the Carrier Dome. They are 3-0 on the road. That is a big help to this profile. So certainly that's why Syracuse, I think, the fact is in the field. They're certainly not safe because of the numbers, but the 2 big wins and the fact they're winning away from home and the fact they're 3-1 in the ACC helps this profile out. So yes, Syracuse is in for now. That obviously always could change. But with the Duke win, it looks a lot better than what it did a week or 2 ago. And maybe that win probably got them in the field. It would be, I would think, for that. And I have them playing the last team in right now, Washington. Again, Pac-12 only has 2 teams in. But Washington right now, I mean, and really, Washington's profile is really boosted by its numbers. The fact that the numbers across the board are really solid here. 3-0 in conference, 12-4 overall, 38 net, 27 RPI, 33 strength of schedule. That right now is what is keeping Washington in the tournament field because they have no wins against a sure tournament team. They do have 2 top 100 wins, but neither Texas A&M or Colorado are anywhere close to sniffing the tournament field. So they are in only because of the fact that their numbers across the board look really solid. And they have no bad losses weighing this profile down. So that also helps them. So that's why right now Washington is the last team in the field for me. 4th seed here in the Midwest. As much as I hate them, it's Villanova. Villanova. You can't spell that without villain because they're villains. 4-0 conference record, leading the Big East, 13-4 overall. The numbers across the board are solid. 27th in the net, 12th in the RPI, 13th in strength of schedule. 3-2 away from home. They have 8 wins against the top 100. They've beaten Florida State. They've beaten Bubble Team Temple. They've beaten St. John's. They've beaten Bubble Team Creighton. They have 2 wins against sure tournament teams. They have a couple wins against teams that are fighting for a spot. And then a couple other nice wins against other teams that are kind of in the mix. DePaul's looking better. But again, it would take an absolute collapse for Villanova not to make this field. They look really good. They do have a bad loss to Penn, but Penn just played out of their mind that night, I think, or something. So Villanova looks really good. I have them taking on Georgia State out of the Sun Belt. Panthers leading the way here again. 13-4 record again, 4-0 in conference play. They have what's interesting is the contrast between the net and their RPI. Their net is 103. Their RPI is 37. That is a huge contrast. But that's probably inflated by the fact that they have beaten Georgia and Alabama, two decent teams from the SEC. So maybe that's why. Damn it. Excuse me. Ah. Stupid phlegm. But Georgia State, so again, they have the 3 top 100 wins, but none of those teams right now are in the field. None of those teams are in. They are 4-3 on the road, but again, this is a scenario of you got to win the conference, I think, to get in the field. 6th seed, Nebraska. What a turnaround for Nebraska. Now, this was a team last year that we were talking about maybe potentially could sneak into the NCAA Tournament field because they were playing really, really well. Well, they have now upped that level this year for sure. Now they look like a tournament team. 3-3 conference record in the Big Ten, 13-4 overall. A net of 10. That is outstanding for the job that Tim Miles has done at Nebraska. 39th in the RPI, 70 strength of schedule. They are 6-4 against the top 100. They have wins over Seton Hall, a win over a bubble team in Creighton, and they just beat IU at IU. That doesn't happen very often. And this team is unranked? Are you kidding me? No, they're going to be ranked next week. I guarantee it. After a win like that, you win at Assembly Hall. No, Nebraska, I would be shocked if Nebraska is not ranked next week. I'd be absolutely shocked. They do also have nice wins over Clemson, Oklahoma State, and Penn State. But, again, 3 wins against the top against tournament teams. They are 2-3 on the road, so that's kind of meh. No bad loss, though, with on this profile. Nebraska is looking really, really solid right now. And I have them taking on St. Louis. The Billikens leading the A-10. 4-0 conference record, 13-4 overall. A net of 63, RPI 56. That's really good. Now, they do have a bad strength of schedule at 138, so that's going to hurt them a little bit. If they don't lead the conference, they probably won't be in the field. They do have a win over Seton Hall, which is nice, and a win over a bubble team Butler. But aside from that, there isn't much here in this profile. They do have a bad loss also to Southern Illinois. So, again, if St. Louis doesn't lead the conference, they're probably not going to be in this field because, again, there's just not enough on the resume to keep them in the field. So that's why they're kind of on this last 4-bye line right now. 3 seed, I mentioned them, Nevada. Even if Nevada doesn't win the conference, Nevada will probably still get a really, a high seed. But I would expect them to win the conference. I don't think UNLV is going to stay there. I think that eventually they're going to fall off. Nevada is the real deal. 4-1 record in the conference, 17-1 overall. Again, I did not change that on here. Why did I not do that? It's early because it's early in the morning, and I'm probably clearly still not awake and full of phlegm. 17-1, 4-1 in conference play, 24th in the net, 8th in the RPI, 57th in strength of schedule. So those are all decent numbers across the board. They do now. The only thing is they do not have a win against a tournament team. They are 3-0 against top 100s. They have wins over Utah State, Fresno State, and Arizona State, but none of those teams, although Arizona State I do have on the next 4 outline, but no wins against a sure tournament team. But even aside from the one bad loss in New Mexico, this team to me looks like a tournament team. Even if they don't win the Mountain West, I think they'll get in regardless. In an interesting twist, I don't know if I just did this by accident or by circumstance. I have Nevada taking on Loyola. And they met actually in the Sweet 16, do you remember, last year on Loyola's run to the Final Four. I don't know that I swear I don't think I did that on purpose. I think that was by complete accident. But I have Nevada playing Loyola. Loyola here, the 14th seed out of the Missouri Valley. Loyola is playing well again at the best time. 4-1 in conference play, 11-7 overall record. Now they do have a net of 119. So this team clearly is not as good as the Final Four team from last year. They do have some players left over from that team, but not all their main guys. But they have no top 100 wins to their name. They're 0-4. So Loyola would have to win the conference tournament to get in the field. It's not going to be an at-large team this year. And they have 3 bad losses weighing down the profile to Boston College, St. Joseph's, and then they lost to Evansville, getting wiped off the floor with Evansville. So this team must win the Missouri Valley Conference tournament to get in for sure this year. 7th seed is Louisville. Louisville, really, again, a really solid team here out of the ACC. 2-1 in conference play, 11-5 overall. The numbers across the board are great. 21 in the net, 23 in the RPI, 8th toughest strength of schedule, really solid there. They have 6 wins against the top 100. They've beaten Michigan State. They've beaten Seton Hall. They've beaten Lipscomb. They've beaten North Carolina. So, again, you got 4 wins there against right now 3 sure tournament teams. Lipscomb's fighting for a spot. And then also wins over Vermont as well, a current conference leader. So yeah, they look really, really good. 2-2 on the road. That could be helped out a little bit, and no bad losses. So Louisville looks really, really solid there. I have them playing Texas out of the Big 12. Number 10 seed Texas. Again, they're one of the last 4 byes in the field. This is a very bubbly profile, but they do have some nice wins here. They're 2-3 in the Big 12. They're 10-7 overall, but the numbers really help Texas' profile here. 46th in the net, 42 in the RPI. They've played the 4th toughest schedule, so they're only behind Kansas, Oklahoma, and Purdue. Texas has played a very tough schedule as well, but they've beaten Purdue. They have a win over Purdue, do you remember? They beat Purdue early in the year, and they beat my Tar Heels. They beat North Carolina. So those 2 wins really help their profile right now. And they also went over Kansas State, and that win looks better the better the Wildcats do. So 3 solid wins, in my opinion, here really helps this profile for Texas. They do have the 1 bad loss to Radford at 101, and they're 1-2 in road games. That doesn't help, which is why they're on the 10 line. But again, aside from that, this looks like a decent profile. Texas in a decent spot for now. 2 seed here is Texas Tech. The Red Raiders looking really good. 4-0 out of the Big 12, 15-1 overall, a net of 5, RPI 14. They do have a 67 strength of schedule, so that's not great, but they're winning games. They're getting the job done. 6 wins of the top 100, including wins over Nebraska, Kansas State, Oklahoma, and the aforementioned Texas. So 4 wins right now against sure tournament teams, 2-0 on the road. Texas Tech looking really, really solid right now. I have them taking on Rider out of the MAAC, the MAAC. Rider 4-0 in conference play, 9-7 overall, a net of 159. So, again, they'd have to win the tournament to get in. No wins against the top 100, though, and 2 bad losses. All right, so that's where we have things right now in terms of the brackets. So, right now, so again, just to recap the situation with my bubble board. The last 4 byes, the last 4 teams that are safely in the field are Texas, Minnesota, St. Louis, although they lead the conference, and Kansas State. Those 4 are kind of like they're safe right now, but they're not in the safest of positions. Now the last 4 in, these teams very tenuous, are VCU, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, and Washington. Those 4 are my last 4 teams in the tournament field. And actually, VCU does play tonight, I believe, against Dayton, a fellow bubble team. So that's going to be a huge game for VCU as well. Now, let's talk about the teams that I currently have out of the field. First 4 teams that are out of the field. My first team out is Temple, and this was not an easy decision. When I first looked through my teams, when I first looked through all the teams and put them in the field, I had 74 teams in the field. So I had to cut out a lot of teams in the field that I had to cut out. And I believe, and Temple was the last team I had to take out because I didn't want to take Temple out of the field. But really, when you look at Temple's profile, it's not as impressive as people may think. Temple, yes, is 3-1 in the American. They're 13-3 overall, and the numbers look great. 44 in the net, 15 in the RPI. I know I might be insane for leaving a 15 RPI team out of the field, but hear me out on this. 35th in strength of schedule. All those are decent numbers. The problem is, of those 13 wins, only 4 have come against the top 100, and only one, Houston, has come against a sure tournament team. Davidson, yes, Davidson certainly is in the hunt, but they're not in right now. Georgia and Missouri, yeah, they're good wins in the SEC, but you know what? They're nowhere near being a tournament team. So Temple, to me, only has one decent win to its profile. It pained me to leave Temple out because I'm looking at those numbers going, I don't know. And they're 4-2 on the road, which is also really good. But the lack of quality wins is making me put Temple out of this field. Temple certainly has the makings of a tournament team, don't get me wrong. But right now, compared to the profiles ahead of them that have more in terms of quality wins, I don't see it here. I don't see the quality win. They only have one to their profile. So that's why I had to drop Temple out. I mentioned Lipscomb. Lipscomb, has the win against TCU. That's really what they're hanging their hat on right now, is that TCU win. If they can lead the conference, I think, and get a safer spot like that, I think that's better for Lipscomb, because aside from that, yeah, they beat Vermont, and Vermont is the conference leader, and that's good too. So really, if you think about it, they've really got 2 decent wins. But I think for Lipscomb, they really have to lead the conference to be safely in, because the other numbers don't really align with being an at-large team. So that's why I have Lipscomb out. What about Butler? Butler, to me, Butler needs more quality wins. Butler, and they're 1-3 in the Big East. And usually teams with losing records in conference in the power conference don't get in the field. It does happen. It happens rarely, not very often. But Butler is 1-3. They're 10-7 overall. It's not great. A net of 50, right at the 50 mark. 56 in RPI. They do have a 26 during the schedule, so that's decent. But also, they're 0-4 in true road games away from Hinkle Fieldhouse. You have to have road wins. You have to win away from home. And Butler isn't doing that right now. And their only win against a sure tournament team is against Ole Miss. That's all they have. And they do have wins over Florida and Creighton. Creighton's fighting for a spot. I don't even have Florida on the board right now, because Florida, I think, number is way too exaggerated. It's too high. They're a 9-7 team now. I think now even 9-8 that lost last night. No, Florida's off my board. So I think they need more wins. They need to start winning away from home to have any chance of getting in. And speaking of Creighton, what about Creighton? What about the Blue Jays? Let's look at Creighton. Creighton's kind of in that same boat. Creighton, again, 1-3, almost a mirror image to Butler. 1-3 in conference play, 10-7 overall record, 56 in the net. They're 44th in RPI. Now, they have played a tougher schedule. They have played the 6th toughest schedule. But again, 3-7 against the top 100, 1-3 on the road away from home. Creighton plays great at home in Omaha. They don't play well on the road. And they have no wins against a sure tournament team right now. Their best win is against Clemson at 59. Clemson's nowhere near this field. East Tennessee State 62, Providence 98. None of those are tournament teams right now. Creighton needs to start beating the big boys in the Big East to have any chance of being in this field, in my opinion. Let's look at the next 4 out. Let's look at Alabama. Alabama, this was a tough one too, because Alabama certainly has a nice group of wins, but again, none of these really, jump off the page and say, wow, it looks like the problem I have with Alabama, their best win is against Kentucky, and that's a really good win. But then after that, it's Murray State, who yes is a conference leader, but that's not a wow win. And then you have Liberty, conference leader, yes, but again, it's just it's not the same pool as Kentucky. Now they do win over Arizona, but Arizona, the Pac-12 is a down conference. So they do have 6 top 100 wins, but only the Kentucky win makes me jump off the page and go, ooh, fireworks. And they're 1-2 in the SEC, so that hurts. They're 1-2 in road games. That hurts. So, and the numbers really aren't that great. 61 in the net, 47 RPI, 33 SOS. Those are decent numbers. Those really don't scream tournament numbers. So Alabama certainly was also a hard team to leave out of the field, but I felt like there's just not enough there to put them in the field. With Basecom, Baylor, You know, it's not personal. They do have, but again, they only have 2 really decent wins to their profile here. But the numbers are not in their factor. They're 2-2 in the conference, 10-6, so those are decent. But again, the numbers here are not in their factor. 65th in the net, 108 in RPI, 91 in strength of schedule. Those are not tournament team numbers. They have 2 good wins over Iowa State and Arizona, but they have 3 bad losses weighing down their profile, losing to Texas Southern, Wichita State, and Stephen F. Austin. Those are not good teams, especially Stephen F. Austin at 276 in the net. That is a huge black mark. Same with Texas Southern at 197. So they are definitely held down by those bad losses. Let's look at Xavier. Xavier is another interesting case. Xavier is also on the next 4 out. Xavier here, 3-2 in the conference. That's really good, but an 11-7 record, not so great. And again, the numbers really weigh this profile down. 79th in the net. That's not good enough. 73rd in RPI. Again, not good enough. They have played a decent schedule, 37th. But you look at who they've beaten. Really, their best win is against Butler, and Butler is a fellow bubble team. So this Xavier has no quality wins to their profile at all. And they're 1-3 again away from home. You got to have road wins. And they have a bad loss to San Diego State. So you got to have more than just that. Xavier just doesn't have enough, in my opinion, to be in. Arizona State was a tough one too. Arizona State was another tough team to leave out of the field. But again, you look at who they've beaten and who they've lost to. Arizona State certainly is in the mix, but the numbers don't agree with it, and the profile doesn't agree with it. They're 11-5 overall. That's a decent record. But an 82 in the net is not good enough, nor is a 59 RPI and a 61 strength of schedule. And then you look at who they have beaten. Kansas, obviously, the Kansas win is going to be probably their high point all year. Beating Kansas, because they're not going to beat anyone in the Pac-12 of that quality. So the Kansas win, they're going to hang their hat on. The Mississippi State win, they're probably going to hang their hat on as long as they do well. But after that, it's Utah State, Georgia, and Colorado. Nothing stands out about those wins. So only 2 wins against tournament teams right now. But again, this profile is dragged down by 3 bad losses. Princeton, 180. Granted, Princeton's a conference leader, but that is not a great loss, especially on your home floor. Utah, 111. Stanford, 124. Not good at all for Arizona State. So that is why they are out of the field. Also, teams that I am considering right now, though at least all these teams are out: Utah State, San Francisco, St. Mary's, North Texas, East Tennessee State, Furman, Davidson, Fresno State, UNC Greensboro, Oregon State, Georgia Tech, Dayton, Notre Dame, Toledo, Memphis, Arkansas, and DePaul. These are teams that are all from within like 30 to 90 actually 40 to 90 in the net. But they don't right now. They just don't have either the numbers or the profile to even be considered to be in the field. So that's it, guys. That completes the first TTM for 2019. Obviously, I will be continually until Selection Sunday, I will be continually updating, the games that go on. I'm changing resumes all the time, shuffling things there. And I'll be putting out new videos, again, probably every 2 weeks, kind of same with ATSD. So probably you'll see in the same week, you'll see an ATSD and a TTM in the same week. So that's probably what the format will be going forward here. And again, you'll pretty much see again some more off-the-cuff stuff about football and other things going on as well in the weeks to come. So thank you guys so much as always for tuning in. Thank you for your support, your views, all you subscribe. You know who you are. Thank you as always, and we will see you again here in a couple weeks for maybe another ATSD video and bracket number 2, second projection for Tracking the Madness 2019. Thank you all. God bless, and have an amazing rest of your day and rest of your week.